If you want to be the first millionaire in your family, this video is exactly for you. Now, I'm not here to share the next trendy hot business idea or how you can make a quick buck. The truth is, those type of models change every single year. I'm here to just share some universal principles which help me move from first generation immigrant working in corporate America, working for the beast, to starting my own business, which currently does over $1.5 million in annual recurring revenue. That allows me a lot more freedoms. And the truth is, all of this was doable because of certain principles I learned over time. Now, most people ignore these principles because they're not sexy, right? These are not going to get you rich overnight. It might be slower growth. But the truth is, most people are beating their head doing the exact same thing in a 9 to 5. And if you internalize these principles, you might be able to get out of the rat race and grow way faster. So grab a notepad and let's get to it. So number one's going to be thinking about what you don't want out of life. Now, I think a lot of people get into business ownership because they think, hey, I want a big house, I want a big car, I want freedom, I want $10,000 in income, whatever. The truth of what I found is avoiding pain is kind of a bigger motivator. So I create something called the don't want list, right? What are things you don't want? And I think you should build a business based off of that. That's a way more powerful motivator. For example, I don't want to answer to a boss who could tell me where to go again. I don't only want 2 weeks of vacation per year. I don't want to commute anywhere. I don't want to ask for permission for time off. I want to avoid pain. That, I think, is a much more powerful list. So the first thing is create a don't want list and make that the basis of your why rather than just a want list, at least at the beginning. The next biggest change is to stop thinking like an employee. Now, you might be thinking, Neel, like, dude, is this one of those mindset things again? Yes, I don't want to be an employee, but truly, for me at least, the employee mindset is very hard to break out of. Like, you're growing up, you're always taught to go to school, get good grades, you could go to a good college, get a stable job. Like, it's just kind of ingrained in our heads to have an employee mindset. So even though you're like, I haven't been an employee in a while, I don't have an employee mindset, I promise you some of it's just seeped into your head from general society. How do you stop thinking like an employee? Number one, realize that a job does not mean stability. It took me a while to unwind that. A lot of people kind of conceptually understand it, but don't really internalize it. Let me give an example. This year, 150,000 jobs were eliminated. UPS just announced that they're laying off 48,000 people. Last year was a big round of big tech layoffs. Another 200,000 people were laid off. Your job is not secure. It's the same as having a business with one client who's in charge of everything. It's the most risky position to be in. So realize, number one, that your job is not secure. If you have the golden handcuffs, it's not secure. The best thing you can do is actually bet on yourself. The next biggest mindset change to stop thinking like an employee and actually take the leap and build $1 million business is to just take extreme ownership. Now, I read this book by Jocko Willink. He's like this crazy Navy US SEALs guy, and he has a book called Extreme Ownership, which pretty much says everything's kind of your fault. And what it pretty much means is everything which happens in your business, to some extent, as long as you take ownership over it, then you can change it. People who typically win in business are ones who take ownership and say, hey, that's my bad, I'll fix it. People who blame the market, blame their boss, blame their parent, blame something external, I rarely see them winning, right? Taking ownership and understanding like, hey, everything is now under your control. There's no such thing as excuses anymore because the buck stops with you. That's probably one of the biggest keys to elevating to the next step and actually fixing up what's here, which is the mindset. The last mindset shift, which took me a while to get to, is that there's no get-rich-quick scheme that's actually sustainable. Your goal in business, I'm assuming if you're watching the channel, is to build real lasting wealth, to have money coming in when you don't have to think about it, not to make a quick buck and then have to find something else. Most schemes you see online are exactly that. They're schemes. Someone told me this once a long time ago. I think my dad told me this. He said there's only two types of businesses. Either you have a real business or you have a scheme. That's it. If you think about it in those buckets, try to build something for the long run. A lot of people say, hey, I'm not having wins in 6 to 12 months. What's going on? Like, I want quicker cash right now. If you come into the mindset with, hey, I'm building something that might take 4 or 5 years, but after that, I have my freedom. It's a very different way of thinking, and actually it's going to get you going much faster and further and build something really sustainable. Let's also talk about something which no one wants to admit, which is boring businesses is where the real cash flow is. Now, I remember when I started my entrepreneurial journey, I was trying to reinvent the wheel. I kept thinking like, oh, what's the problem I have in my life? And at the time, mid-20s, I was just going out to bars all the time. So I would think, oh, people are waiting in line for bars too much and you don't really know if a bar is full. I'm going to make an app that tells you wait times at bars. Stupidest freaking idea, right? But I spent months trying to do this really stupid app. Eventually, what I found after launching Made This, I found a post on Reddit of a guy who started a cleaning company, and I was so pissed that I spent so much time wasting not making money that I was like, fine, like cleaning company, let me just launch it, see what happens, and it worked. And the truth of what I found is there's these ancient rivers of wealth, these businesses and trades which have been around forever. Cleaning's been around for thousands of years. So many of these trades and service type businesses which have been around forever, and they're boring, and that's totally fine. Like, you don't need a sexy business. The boring business are typically the ones that print money. Based off of this premise, I actually made this franchise, which allows people to copy my model for a cleaning company and run it across the nation in their own cities. For example, we have Dan, who joined the system, quit his job within 3 months. We have Brian and Jen, who bought their first location and then expanded to a second location. So a bunch of people are running the same model. If you're interested, by the way, check out maidthisfranchise.com, MAIDTHIS franchise.com. I can tell you a bunch of information about it. But the premise is, if you want to grow fast, build something sustainable, and check out some of these boring old school industries. That's where the real cash flow is. Next thing I could recommend is to solve real problems which already exist for people, not imaginary problems, and don't invent problems. It kind of goes back to what we were just talking about with finding ancient rivers of wealth businesses. Cleaning is an example of one, but the truth is, there's people searching for stuff on the internet all the time already. It's much easier to build a business where you could sell to people who already have their wallets out and they want to buy it, as opposed to educating someone about something that exists first. An example is I met a guy who started a home maintenance business. It's like a subscription business where you pay and they just maintain your home. I love the idea, but the problem is no one knows this actually exists. So you then have to educate the market to exist. No one's searching home maintenance subscription service. I guarantee thousands of people in your city are searching for a cleaning service. So just sell to people what they're already looking for. It makes life a lot easier. I put a link to the top 7 recession-resistant franchises. It's going to be a link somewhere over here. Check it out if you're curious to learn more about some options for yourself for business models to start. Who here has ever heard the phrase diversify your income streams, right? I think this is a huge fallacy which gets people stuck because they try to do that way too early on. Instead of focusing on one thing, they're like, oh, I've heard a wise person once say, diversify your income streams. Here's the truth. When you have wealth, then you diversify. So the people is telling you to diversify. It's true. Maybe they do have wealth, but they built their wealth first by focusing on one thing, and then they diversified. It's going to be the same for your business. Don't offer multiple things in order to diversify and feel more stable. Become really freaking good at one thing and focus only on that. That's the real way to scale really fast and grow your wealth here. Hey, buddy. Next up, think about systems over hustle. And, I'm sure a lot of you have heard the phrase work on your business, not in your business. Whatever. I don't really like catchphrases like that too much. But here's the truth. When you first launch your business, the first 0 to 10,000 per month, you're going to have to hustle. You're doing things which are not scalable. And that's okay. The goal is to document what you do and eventually hire people to do it. So systems mean just like document exactly what you're doing. Create a video like this, go on loom.com, document everything you're doing and put it into a folder. Google Doc, I don't really care where you're putting it. That's going to allow you to replace yourself quicker. I did not do this. To be honest, most business owners don't do this. But look at a lot of our competitors in the cleaning market. They don't do this, right? They just do things themselves. They know what's going on in their head. They're the business by themselves. They don't build themselves an asset. They build themselves a job. So just document what you're doing. You'll be ahead of the game. Next up is something pretty simple, but I guarantee like 7 out of 10 business owners don't do it, which is just track your numbers. And I don't mean like just your revenue and profit and cash in your bank account. What I mean is like how many leads you're getting, what are your close rates, what are your marketing sources, the main metrics which drive your revenue. Now, this is something I didn't do until like 4 or 5 years into my business. I wish I did it just from day one. Because number one, it's easy enough to do. You just have to have a little bit of discipline to actually write it down or hire someone else to write it down for you. Then on the weekly basis, like all the information is in front of you right there. You could diagnose what's going wrong with your business and fix it super quickly. So knowing your numbers is the key to unlocking fast growth. So almost all locations when they launch, we teach against this in our franchise system, but I've spoken with a lot of new entrepreneurs. And here's the incorrect fallacy they think. They say, hey, I'm going to just undercharge the market to get customers and get comfortable. I'm going to charge the lowest rate possible. I did this. We were charging $55 cleanings. Now I'd pay the cleaner $45 and be like, oh, sick, I made $10. That's beer money. This is great. It was a terrible decision because number one, the customers who are bargain hunters are typically the worst customers. Number two, you don't actually make enough money to be able to get yourself out of that type of mix once you start into it. It's better to charge higher and then just make sure you over service the customer. What I mean by that is, let's say you could charge $55, but instead you charge double that. With the extra money, add a bunch of bells and whistles and things to make it extra convenient for the client and better for the client, even if it's unscalable. Just make it an amazing experience with the extra money at the beginning. That's going to get you your next client, and it's going to get you clients who are willing to pay more. So remember, don't try to be a bottom barrel type of company. It doesn't work unless you're Walmart. So this next one is something I realized only after I launched my business about why the cleaning industry is actually a good industry, and I'm happy I got into it. I'll explain this on a high level. There's two types of businesses I think are good to start. Either you're going to have a low ticket amount, like cleaning. Your cleaning's under $300 on average, but it's high recurring, right? Low ticket, high recurring. Or you're going to have high ticket, like a $3,000 plus ticket, but that's going to be low recurring. It's very rare for you to have a very high ticket recurring service. It doesn't really exist because people can't afford that unless you're selling to like businesses or something like that. But to consumers, it's going to be one of those two options, right? So make sure you pick a business, in my opinion, if you want to get started and you don't want to invest a ton of money up front, which has those variables and is, my opinion, I like the recurring part of it. So for example, cleaning. Average ticket would be under $300, but a lot of people buy a recurring service. So yes, it's tougher to grow quickly because you're selling $200, $300 cleanings, but over time, a chunk of those become recurring. The next year's easier, the next year's easier, the next year's easier. And things just become easier as you grow and you have a real sustainable asset. I like that model rather than one-off sales where you have to hunt constantly. So try to think about business models which do that. Things I don't like would be things like carpet cleaning. Like how often are you getting your carpet cleaned at your home? Probably not often. So it's one-off services and they're low ticket, not a great model. Once you start actually having real sustainable growth in your business and pulling out profits, what you can do at that point would be to diversify. So there's active businesses and then passive businesses. Your goal, or at least my goal in business is an active vehicle. You could probably make higher cash flow in active vehicles, and then you park it in more passive investments. Passive investments typically are not going to get you as much cash flow, but they're passive, right? So what I do, for example, is I make money on business and I take that money and I buy real estate with it. Real estate, you're not going to get great cash flow compared to investing in your business, but at least it's a sustainable asset outside of your business. So remember, active, move it over to passive. Next up, I would say a big driver of success in growing and becoming a millionaire, to be honest, is just helping other people along the way. Truly, like one thing I started to do later on my career is post on social media, which is what I'm doing right now. And it's a way of helping teach other people. But the truth is you make so many incredible connections by doing it. And the truth is people want to reciprocate. If you provide value to other people, it's just kind of human nature to do something back for you, right? If you open a door for someone and they go in front of you, and there's another door, they're probably going to keep that open for you, right? Unless they're a dick. But that's just kind of human nature. So the more value you put out, the more you help other people, it's going to come back to you tenfold. So if you're serious about becoming the first millionaire in your family, these are some secrets I've learned over the last decade plus of doing this, which will help you scale to $1 million and beyond in whatever business you start. I implemented a lot of these systems myself in my own business. I currently run my own location here, which is well over $100,000 per month in revenue, and help a lot of other people do similar type of things. For example, Dan, who quit his job within 3 months of starting and made this location, or Brian and Jen, who bought into and made this location and then expanded to a second location to do the same thing themselves. So if you're interested to learn more, check out other videos on my channel or check out madethisfranchise.com, see if it's a good fit for you.